Everybody, welcome to Late Night Football. Welcome to our post-match reaction show, post-match fallout, whatever you want to call it. This is basically we're going to talk about the Manchester derby that just happened, Manchester United against Manchester City. And as always, when one team loses and loses so badly, there's always going to be some kind of post-mortem, some kind of analysis to do. And it is something that I've been thinking about for a long, long time. I've been thinking about, what went wrong in this game, right? And I've been thinking about this game for a very long time because, as I said it before, it's one of those things where I knew United were going to lose, and I knew it was going to be a bloodbath, right? It was going to be bad. It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, but I knew it was going to be bad. And so the question that pops up, when that happens, is I was thinking, well, why? Why am I thinking like that? Why in what is Manchester United what is one of Manchester United's biggest games of the season? Why am I and many other fans, for that matter, already going in knowing that they're going to lose and that they're going to get embarrassed? And why is it that we're going to this game thinking, well, we're going to lose 4-0, 5-0, 6-0, and then we're like, well, we only lost 4-0, 3-0. And many fans will be like, well, we only lost 3-0 at the end of the day. I thought it was going to be much worse. And why is it, right? And I think a lot of that is to do with the fact that I think most fans have lost faith in the team. Most fans have probably lost faith in the manager as well. I have not lost faith, and so that's where we're coming at, right? We lost faith that this team can do anything, right? And I have not lost faith in the manager, but I do believe that, like many of us, the manager has lost faith in the team. He has lost faith in the team, and I think that's why the title of it says "Sleepwalking Towards the Sack," because he is sleepwalking towards the sack. Because if you look, and I said this in the match reaction video as well, a telling moment was towards the end of that game, right? Pep Guardiola, I think it was probably 75th, 80th minute. Pep Guardiola 3-0 up, right? Manchester City 3-0 up. Pep Guardiola is on the touchline going, oh, do this, do that, right? Like he's still trying to coach his team and trying to tell them what to do. Ten Hag just sat on the bench. He sat there and he's just going. That's all he's doing, right? And to me, that is the body language the person is saying. And I would explain this in Hindi much better, but what he's basically saying is, it doesn't matter what I do, you guys are just useless. You guys are just hopeless. It doesn't matter what I do, you guys are just not going to be able to do it. You guys just are not good enough to compete with Manchester City. You almost like I'm speculating here, but his body language and his facial expressions almost said that. Right, and then definitely I was saying that. I was saying that's like, it doesn't matter who he brings on. Like who is he going to bring on up that bench? That is going to change this, turn this game around. And in some ways, what I will say, and again, this is speculation, but I do feel that in some ways, Ten Hag looked at the fixture schedule and he looked at the game against Manchester City, and then he looked at the game against Newcastle United in the Carabao Cup. Now, I think the reason why, he said Reguilon and Varane have not played for tactical reasons. I thought Varane was actually injured, but that's not true. Actually, he said they're not playing for tactical reasons. And I think the tactical reason is that he believes that Newcastle game is more important, and that Newcastle game is the one that he needs to win more than this Manchester derby. And so he's decided that my best players, my only available left back and my best centre half, should not be risked in this Manchester derby. They should be protected for that Carabao Cup game against Newcastle United. That says a lot about where Manchester United are at this point, where they said where the manager is basically saying, I don't care about what happens in this game. I know, and to be honest, Ten Hag is not a fool. He knows that if he plays Maguire and Evans, he's basically throwing the match away. He's basically telling people, I don't believe that we can win this match, and that's okay. It's almost like saying Manchester City go and win this game. Right? It's almost like that. I don't care about what happens. I care about that. I want to win that Newcastle game more, and that's a reflection of where Manchester United are at this point in time, where they basically put the white flag up in front of Manchester City. But I do believe in some ways they looked at that way, and I think that's one of the reasons why he has not played Kobe Manu. Like, he didn't bring him on at all, because I think he thought he didn't want to tarnish him in this game. Like, why would you want to bring him on and when this team is playing so shit? I'll protect him for the Newcastle game. Amrabat gets taken off at halftime. Supposedly he's probably injured. I don't think he looked injured, so maybe it was some slight niggle. But he's thought, I don't want him to get injured for that Newcastle game. Let's take him off and bring him off. And I don't want him. And maybe he gets a second yellow and gets suspended as well for that Newcastle game. Again, not wanting to do that. So everything that he did in this game, I think, was with an eye on that game against Newcastle. That's one of the reasons probably why Antony didn't play a lot. Probably the reason why Rashford played 85 minutes, maybe because he's not going to play the next game. But all of that, to me, and that's speculation, right? That's the speculation. I do believe, if you look at his body language, he's almost accepted his fate. And this is something I've been consistent about from preseason. I've said from preseason, Shawn Michaels said this, right? Like, I've lost a lot of things. One of them has been my smile, if anybody remembers that. And I think this is Ten Hag. Maybe at the end of this, he will say, yes, I've lost a lot of things. One of them has been my smile, because he has lost his smile. If you look at him from last year, so magnetic, so energetic. He had like this, he almost had this quality about him where he looked so upbeat every time, right? He had this wonderful magnetism about him. Now, if you listen to him, or if you look at him, he just looks, he has the air of a man who's resigned, who's like almost like, when you're in your notice period, if you're in your job and you're in your notice period, right? You still show up at work, you still do what's asked of you, but you don't have that same energy. You still don't have that same enthusiasm about your job anymore. You're not as focused. You're maybe conserving your energy a little bit for your next job. So you reduce, maybe you perform only at 60-70% of capacity. Doesn't mean you don't want to. It just means you kind of already know what's going to happen. So you know that it doesn't matter what you do here. If you do a good job, it doesn't matter. If you do a good job, sure, people appreciate it, but it doesn't really matter at the end of the day, because you're getting a new job anyway. And if you do a bad job, what's anybody going to say to you, right? What are they going to say to you? And I think Ten Hag is kind of like that as well. He's kind of already knows that I can't get this team to perform any better than they already are. This team has hit its ceiling, and therefore I'm just going to go through the motions. I'm going to do what I need to do, get them ready, whatever. If they perform well, fine. If they lose, it doesn't matter. I'm getting sacked anyway. So I think he already knows that, right? And I think that's what happened. And I think maybe even, and it's a little bit not the same analogy, because if he does well, obviously he doesn't get sacked. But I think he's almost feeling like this team is not going to win the title. This team is not going to finish top 4. This team is not good enough to do what I want them to do. I don't like this team, and therefore, and these players probably don't like me either. But to me, even if I coach them well, even if I train them well, they're just not good enough to compete with the Manchester Cities and the Liverpools of this world. So why bother, right? And if I don't do that well, I'll get sacked, and I'm going to get sacked one way or another. It's just a matter of when, right? So I think maybe that's part of it. And I do believe that, actually, I was going to say this. I was going to say that it's a matter of when, not if, that Erik Ten Hag is going to get sacked, because I think he's moving in that direction. But because of my theory that maybe he's focusing on that Newcastle game, I will say probably that's not the case, because I think if we are getting to that point now where it's the same as Manchester United and the Sir Alex, where they had that Mark Robbins game, right? I think it was against Forest in the FA Cup, where everybody thought United would lose and Ferguson would get sacked. Even though he says he wouldn't have, but I think a lot of people just assumed they would lose that game and he would get the sack and that it would be over, right? And then Mark Robbins popped up with the goal, and then things changed. United won that game, and then things changed. And I think maybe Ten Hag is approaching that moment as well, where if they win against Newcastle, maybe things will change. But if they lose, Ten Hag, I do believe that if they lose, then it will be a matter of when and not if Ten Hag will get sacked. I still feel Ten Hag is on borrowed time. I still feel like there's not much left there, because to be honest, and I don't want to blame the ownership, right? We talked about that so often. I don't want to talk about that. I really want to talk about Ten Hag, and he has made mistakes this season. There's no doubt. Today the tactics were non-existent. I can't see any patterns of play. I think losing Lisandro Martinez, they made a massive difference to the side, but you shouldn't be relying on one player anyway. Not buying a CDM in hindsight. Not buying just Amrabat. They needed 2 CDMs and maybe a box-to-box midfielder. They didn't buy that. That's just looks like a mistake. He probably thought he could make Mason Mount into something. But I said it, a lot of other people said it, Mason Mount is a crap player. He's an average player who's overrated because he's English. He might have been good a couple of years ago, but you don't buy players because they were good a couple of years ago. You buy them because they're good now. And to spend 60 million pounds on a player like that, I think even Ten Hag probably thought afterwards, why did I do that? And I think that will be his defining legacy when he gets sacked, that he got sacked because he bought Mason Mount for 60 million pounds. If he had spent that money on an Onana, a Lavia, I screamed my lungs out, buy Lavia, Romeo Lavia, buy him for 60 million pounds. You can get him for 60 million pounds, buy him. Buy Amadou Onana, is not Andre Onana, but Amadou Onana is available, a good player for Everton, does really well. You could probably get him for 30 million, buy him. Those are the kind of players you need to be buying. Not that they're world-class players, but those are the kind of players you need. Lavia got injured anyway, so ultimately it wouldn't have mattered. But Onana is doing quite well for Everton. You buy him, right? He's a good, you could have bought Gravenberg. Gravenberg was crying out to leave Bayern, and until Liverpool got him. You could have, United could have bought him. You could have come to Manchester United because of that connection with Ten Hag. You could have bought him. He didn't buy him. So, there were options, and instead they kept pining for, they bought Mason Mount, spent all that money on him, and ultimately they lost out, and they even could have had to wait to sign Amrabat because of that. Let Fred go because they thought McTominay was also leaving. Yet, McTominay didn't leave. Fred had to leave because he actually, I don't think Ten Hag wanted to sell Fred before selling McTominay. I think he wanted to see, he didn't want Fred and he didn't want McTominay. But nobody was willing to pay what Man United wanted for McTominay, and nobody was willing to pay McTominay what he wanted in wages. Fred was able to get his wages, he was able to get a transfer fee, so they sold him first. But it seems like a stupid decision now, because at least Fred would have offered an option as a CDM, and particularly in a game like this, they could have used him instead of McTominay. McTominay offers nothing. So it's been a lot of poor planning, poor squad planning, poor tactical decisions as well today. I mean, some of the tactics I said, they were so awkward. I mean, taking off Amrabat, bringing on Mount, taking off Hojlund, putting Rashford as a striker. I mean, with Marcus Rashford, I have to say, he tried to do what he did with Onana, right? Where he told, where Onana had some poor performance, and he said, no, I back Onana. Onana will come good. And Onana responded and he said, yes, my manager has backed me. I have to prove him right. So I will play well. And he played well. He's played well in the last 2 or 3 games. He's done much better than he has done before. Looked good, looked solid. He's improved. Rashford has not. Rashford today had a chance to prove his manager right, but he stepped down because he's someone who doesn't have that leadership capability. And I said this last season. I said, if somebody offers 70-80 million pounds for Rashford, I would take it. Because I don't think he's going to get much better than what he did last season. Last season was his peak, his ceiling. He's not going to get better than that. In fact, if anything, he's going to regress. At that point, I didn't know that a new contract was actually being talked about. If I had known that, I would have said even more that please sell him. Don't give him a new contract. Sell him. But I didn't know this. So now it's quite obvious that last season he was just playing for a new contract. He wasn't actually playing for the club. He was playing for a new contract. And he's got his contract. Now he doesn't want to get injured. He doesn't want to risk his body for the club. He just wants to coast through, maybe get a goal here and there, pad his stats a little bit. Doesn't want to put in the work. He's not somebody who should be at the club. And he's only at the club because he's English and because he's a youth player. That is the only reason why he's at the club. Otherwise, any other team, if he wasn't English, if he wasn't a youth product, United would have been trying to sell him, actively flog him. And any other club would have got rid of him long time ago. A long time ago, he would have had to go. But it's Manchester United, these things... it doesn't matter what you do on the field. It's what you do off the field that matters for Manchester United as a club. So anyway, that's a different matter. But I think Ten Hag was also wrong. If he insisted on keeping Rashford, then he was wrong there as well. And that is something that he will have to live with, because I think Marcus Rashford should have been sold. These are the kind of decisions. Bruno playing Bruno on the wing again. I mean, it's like asking to be sacked, isn't it? I think Ten Hag is asking to be sacked. And I keep saying, and I will say this one more time, see that in his body language. You see that in the way that he's answering questions at the press conference. You see that in the way that he's in the deadline. This is not a manager who's happy at the club. This is not a manager who's thinking, about the game. This is not a manager who is who wants to make the team better. This is a manager who's checked out. This is a manager who has basically said to himself that I am done with this team. I'm done with this club. This club can't do what I want. This team is going to disappoint me. This team is not what cannot do what I wanted to do. So I'm washing my hands off of this. Please sack me. I need to get out of here. That's what it is. That's what I believe. Right? And maybe I'll be proved wrong. Maybe United will been prompt to victory in the next few games, but I just don't see it happening. Even the wins have been 1 goal, fluke wins. Look at back, they've all been fluky wins by 1 goal. The only one game was when they played Palace's B team in the Carabao Cup, they beat them. Now, otherwise, all the other games in the Premier League, Champions League, it's all been fluky, 1-0, 2-1s, 3-2s, those kind of results. They've never been, convincing wins. So I just don't see it changing. Because there's an imbalance in that squad that cannot be fixed. Maybe and he can be innovative. You can still be innovative. I mean, you could play a back three, play a 3-5-1-1. It's an obvious thing. If you have so many midfielders, play 5 midfielders, play McTominay as a number 10 behind Hojlund, play 5 midfielders. Then you've got a bit of protection for yourself with 6. You give yourself 4 midfielders. And then you still have a striker and you play two wide backs. You can do it. The problem is if you have to play 3-5-1-1, you cannot play Marcus Rashford. Marcus Rashford then cannot play because he cannot play a position. But you have to find a position for Marcus Rashford. So therefore he has to play. I would much sooner play Garnacho and Antony as wing backs, because I think Antony could be a good wing back because he does have very good work rate. So and as a wing back, you're not expected to attack that much. So he could be a good wing back. I think Garnacho could do a job as well as a wing back. He definitely could play as a number 10. Behind the striker as well, but he could definitely do a job as a wing back as well. You still got Pelistri as well, who could do that, who could play that role. Dalot can play that role as well. So you've got options. It's just a matter of being a little bit creative and innovative and trying to figure something out. But it's just lacking because ultimately, Ten Hag has to fit in the players that he has to fit in, and so therefore it's a matter of not wanting to change formations, not wanting to change positions because. And then part of it is also that the players themselves don't want to play different positions. Like we know Rashford doesn't want to play anywhere other than left wing or striker. He doesn't want to. He refuses to play as a right winger. He refuses to play anywhere else. So you've got that situation as well with players as well who don't want to change. I mean, Maguire, I think, always likes to play left side centre back, doesn't want to play right side centre back. Apparently, got players like that who make those kind of demands. Imagine what that is. So anyway, but that's what I'm saying. I mean, that for me, I think is the key that I want to end this on, is that I feel that Newcastle game is now pivotal, and I think depending on his team selections, because if he keeps the same team, if he picks Rashford again, if he picks Bruno again, neither of these two should start that game. Bruno and Rashford should not be starting that game, and I don't think Maguire, Evans, or Maguire and Evans don't need to start either, because if he's got Varane back and he's got Reguilon back, there's no need to play Maguire or Evans in that game. Not that Maguire had a bad game. I don't think he had a bad game, but he shouldn't be starting. The manager's already decided, I'm not going to play him anymore. Why are you going back to him? If you've already decided he's not good enough, don't bring him back in. Bring somebody else, because then you make a statement to the board, right? You make a statement to the board saying, I don't want this player, so I'm not going to pick him. But he keeps picking him. It's almost saying, well, yeah, maybe I can work with him, right? That's kind of that's not good for a manager to do that. Same thing with McTominay. McTominay shouldn't be starting in the next game either. So if these 5 players, if any of these 5 players play that next game, and I'm sure at least 3 of them will, I can guarantee you right now at least 3 of them will play. Then I think, you know, Ten Hag has signed his own warrant, and he's basically said sack me. He's basically sacked me because United will not win that game, and I think once they lose that game, I think then it's just then there's this one direction that he is headed in. You know, and again, I am not saying that I'm Ten Hag out. What I'm saying is that he is making himself, he's doing that to himself. Like, I'm not saying he should be sacked, because I feel it's pointless, but he's not helping his case by, you know, making all these decisions, which maybe he's making them because he has faith in them, or maybe he's making them because he's been told to make them. We don't know. But what we do know is that if he keeps making them, he is not going to last in the job very long. That's all I would say. Anyway, share your thoughts. Maybe you agree with me, maybe you disagree with me, maybe I'm being too harsh. Put that in the comments. Always love to hear from you guys. Put that in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, smash a like on it. Smash a like for this video. Do remember to subscribe to our channel on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Always appreciate your support. Yeah, I mean, it's just a lot to take in and to talk about, right? So please do that. And we'll see you again for the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.